Back. The chair would now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, thanks to the witnesses for being here. Ms. Mitchell, just one question. Since we're using the admittedly flawed criteria that the IRS used, how many organizations were ultimately denied their tax-exempt status as social welfare organizations for compliance with 501c4?
Congressman, you know, that is part of what the Sixth Circuit excoriated the IRS about in that opinion.
I don't think any.
Right? I don't think we know yet.
So,
I don't think we know yet.
I appreciate that. So, given that, I just would like to make a few observations. We find ourselves here during what has been much publicized as the GOP Tax Week, and I suppose during Tax Week we're here to commemorate the 150 million tax filings that flooded into the IRS, 5 million coming in just yesterday after the deadline passed. The majority no doubt thinks the best way to curry favor with the American public is to blame the IRS. I don't buy it, frankly. I would point out that Congress gets the money to fund this hearing from IRS tax revenue, that we earn our salaries as members of Congress thanks to the IRS collecting tax revenue. And so while the IRS absolutely and legitimately needs reform, the majority refuses to acknowledge what the agency does right, how to fix what actually needs to be fixing, and instead looks to generate headlines this week by blaming the IRS for seemingly everything wrong with the government. So here's the question. Were social welfare groups handled inappropriately at the IRS? Yes. But is that the real scandal, Mr. Chairman? The real scandal, I would suggest, is the fact that political spending by so-called social welfare groups is exempted from taxation and is subsidized by the American people. These groups are some of the biggest players in politics, and my friends on the other side of the aisle should not be complicit in their attempt to hide their donors or agendas behind some hollow outrage at the IRS. The poor handling of tax-exempt applications at the IRS was a direct result of the Supreme Court's obliterating our campaign finance system in Citizens United. After that decision, thousands of new applications flooded the IRS. These groups were specifically created to skirt disclosure requirements and contribution limits. That's the scandal that we ought to be focused on. Consider that just after Citizens United came down, thousands of new applications came in for social welfare tax-exempt status, a 92% increase from 2009 before Citizens United to 2012. Many of these groups were created at the direction of sophisticated, well-connected, and well-funded Beltway campaign funders who went to work to create all kinds of complicated webs of tax-exempt groups to funnel money, unlimited contributions from one organization to another. Why? Why was that done? What is the scandal here? It's to hide the identity of donors, to make it seem as though campaign season ads are speaking for the people, when they're really speaking for the wealthy individuals and corporations that fund these super PACs that so often we don't even know about because of these 501c4s, to obscure connections to corporations that don't have the best interest of the people at heart, corporations who want to stop clean energy requirements, corporations who want to prevent efforts to stem the tide of gun violence, corporations who want to protect subsidies, tax breaks, and loopholes. And many of these social welfare organizations are nothing more than a post office box in Alexandria, Mr. Chairman. Why do we have to continue to waste the resources of this Congress to conduct this hearing after internal and external IRS reviews, FBI and Department of Justice investigations, a partisan contempt proceeding, and multiple investigations by House committees, including hundreds of interviews and hundreds of thousands of pages of documents collected? We find ourselves just where we started. The real scandal is the scandal this Congress is doing nothing about, and it's the overwhelming influence of money in politics. The true scandal is that Congress refuses to accept responsibility for putting the IRS in the position of evaluating tax-free political activity. The actual scandal is that Congress refuses that the American people shouldn't be forced to subsidize the political activities of sham groups. The scandal that I'm most ashamed of, though, Mr. Chairman, is that this House of Representatives will do nothing except hold these show trials. Today's hearing won't do a thing to stop a system that protects big money in politics, but it will help to continue the dominance of the wealthy few over the will of the people in our American democracy. That, Mr. Chairman, is the scandal that we ought to be focused on, and I hope one day we will. And with that, I yield back.